Anyone can pick up a guitar and write a song, but how do you know your soul was meant to be a musician? How do you know this is your destiny, not just some phase of your life? I have a story of my trials and tribulations as a musician that I think you're going to find helpful. Hey, I'm Dan Sage. For those who are new here, I am writing poems on demand in the streets for strangers and building an off-grid home in the desert. I've been doing this for the past few years after spending most of my life as a musician. I started at the beginning of the pandy with a very small amount of money I saved as an over-the-road truck driver, spent it on some inexpensive high desert off-grid land, camping amongst the sagebrush for months while I started to build the cabin of my dreams. You might be wondering what has led me to these life decisions, to build a house in the middle of the desert and become a musician and typewriter poet. These aren't career paths traditionally offered to most youths. First, I'd like to give my mom some credit. One night, after stressing over a project on African diamonds assigned by my North Carolina Magnet Middle School in 7th grade social studies, which was due the next morning, by the way, my mom caught me scrambling, trying to put it all together, and we got into a big fight. In a bit of rage and desperation, I ended up saying a sentence that would change the trajectory of my life forever. I said, I just want to get a C on this project, to get a C in this grade so I can move on to the next one and get a C in that so I can drop out and start my real life. Taken aback with my honesty and frustration, my mom chose to start looking at the big picture and realized that empathy might be more important than authority in this situation. Responding, well, if that's how you really feel, let's go to the principal's office tomorrow and withdraw you to homeschool.
Pie in your pie, it's a dive, that's a nice try, that's amore.
Sure enough, the next morning we marched in and told the disappointed principal to shove it, and my journey towards becoming an autodidact began. The next day, my mom tried to force me to read a book called The Teenage Liberation Handbook by Grace Llewellyn. Ironically, I refused, not ever even getting a taste of liberation in my programmed existence thus far. She responded, well, fine then, you're on your own, you are an unschooler. Relieved to finally have freedom, but not knowing even what that really meant, I was lost. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my time, because every moment of my life to this point, since preschool, had been filled with tests, grades, 1-hour-long classes, homework, and sports. Because I had been told what to do under someone else's authority for most of my life, I simply stared at the wall, ate, and slept for 2 weeks. From an outside perspective, this may have looked like a disaster, but I can assure you what was happening in my subconscious was incredible. By allowing me to de-school myself and giving me true authority and freedom over my life, I began to unwind my mind and organically figure out who I was and what my passions were, rediscovering the gifts of play, curiosity, and imagination. Slowly, I just developed a profound interest in music. I spent whole days downloading music for free illegally on LimeWire, listening to records and amassing a huge music library. I always wanted to hear everything, but some albums I played over and over. My favorite was Nevermind by Nirvana. Deeply inspired by rock and roll, punk, grunge, and what it stood for, I asked for an electric guitar and began spending all my time practicing and writing songs at 14 years old. The conservative, religious, suburban nature of my area of North Carolina forced me inward and pressed me to find escape through music. With no driver's license or means of getting out, my imagination and creativity ran wild. By the time I was 17, I had been in 3 bands, written hundreds of songs, and even met with a major record label and was offered a deal. However, I still had much to learn about healthy relationships, so things crumbled before we achieved any noteworthy success. Even though we never reached stardom, I knew there was a deep psychic magic within my soul and an interesting story to tell. I accepted a name change suggestion to Dan Sage from my table tennis guru and chose to move to Memphis, Tennessee solo at age 18 in a vintage diesel Mercedes that I converted to run on waste vegetable oil. Rolling up in style, I walked down Beale Street like so many great musicians before me, listening to every blues and soul singer I could, utterly inspired. Realizing all of the rock, grunge, and punk had come from the blues, afterwards I sat in a small city park meditating, and a strange spiritual sensation washed over me, giving me the chills. I lost track of time for a moment, felt a buzzing on my forehead, and when I tried to move, it was like the air was filled with dense possibilities. At that moment, a phone call came through with an offer to live in an artist collective with a grungy but vibrant part of Memphis called Midtown. I took it as an omen and moved into the 7-bedroom, 100-year-old Victorian, probably haunted house to join the budding cooperative. Full of young talent, this house was my first experience living with exclusively other people my age, a lot of them musicians, and things got wild quick. While hosting couch surfers from all over the world continuously, we also had DIY house concerts from touring and local bands twice a week. We became a hub for the local countercultural and creative community. It was like having a lot of the benefits of going to college without most of the downsides, like student debt. I dived into studying blues, rock, and soul, Otis Redding, Howlin' Wolf, and other greats, while getting a job as a singing tour guide. While telling their stories inside a moving tour bus, I synced up with the driver as the city passed by all around us. I also developed a strong passion for civil rights, telling the story of MLK's assassination and singing gospel songs that grasped at the freedom of the soul. This devotion to opening minds and transcending race, religion, and gender has stayed with me to this day. Concurrently, I signed with a new manager and began collaborating with dozens of hip-hop artists in the local rap scene, often driving from studio to studio all night, recording hooks and writing for other musicians. I would come home at sunrise and sleep while the day's activity buzzed all around. Soon, I recorded my first solo record, giving out free CDs to whoever I met. This caught the attention of a local Grammy Award-winning producer, John Hampton, who won 2 Grammys for The White Stripes, Get Behind Me, Satan, and Jimmy Ray Vaughan. We recorded a full-length album together at the legendary Ardent Studios, and I also formed a 4-piece band called Gypsy Wildlife, and we made a record with that band and toured the U.S. right as I turned 20 years old. We ended up breaking up on the road, and I hopped trains to return to Memphis, making it back penniless as per usual in those days. Always the less money I had, the more interesting my life got. This, however, put me on the fringe of society, a dangerous place to be in America. One day I took a job offer 50 miles away on a farm and set out by bicycle. Blowing a tire along the way, I attempted to squat in a nearby home that was for sale. When the owners came home, I was arrested at gunpoint and spent 2 weeks in jail for trespassing in rural Arkansas, having nearly escaped with my life. Now joining the long list of blues musicians who had been to jail, I was released and moved to Nashville to recover, finding out my guitars were stolen while I was incarcerated. Continuing to work on music there, we got the band back together, and my bandmate recovered my stolen guitar and invited me to join a new musicians collective house in Memphis. I got my job back as a singing tour guide and fell in love with one of our couch surfers, riding bicycles all over Memphis, happier than ever. In the heart of the Delta, next to the Mississippi, the capital of soul. This was the peak of my songwriting, writing some of my best songs inspired from life experience. And I soon started getting offers for shows in Europe. And so I decided to book my first European tour, 50 shows in 90 days, flying first to Iceland. I basked in the 24/7 daylight and played music in the streets at all hours of the night, meeting other local musicians and going on epic adventures. The paying gigs and nice accommodations were amazing. Denmark, Switzerland, Sweden, Spain. Across borders, I rode mighty high-speed trains, having the time of my life. What was to be a peak of my success in my early 20s? Unfortunately, I had not mastered the art of self-care. And eventually, all the high workload and traveling caught up with me, and I flew back to the US after a successful tour, completely burnt out. I moved to Tucson to get my commercial driver's license to drive large semi-trucks and put my guitar away for 2 years. Music is a way to go beyond what we see before us in the material world. It can be ethereal. It is one of the most powerful things you can do with your voice, your life force energy. Be careful of the intentions you have behind your songs. They reverberate into the cosmos and are exponentially absorbed by the world. I personally think musicians are the most powerful people in the world, not presidents or religious figures. Musicians, they control the sonic realm, and when you record a song worth playing over and over, it shapes you and it shapes the world. However, wanting to make better money fast, I quickly made it through truck driving school in Arizona and got a job offer. Loving the first month, I soaked up the constant action, beautiful scenery, simple lifestyle, and good money. I made all my own healthy meals and locked a bicycle on the back for exploring and exercised. Easily drained by the large crowds and energetic nature of performance, I rebounded nicely with a long period of alone time behind the wheel of a large truck. Something about the hum of the tires, passing mountains, and listening to music and podcasts all day allured me. I spent 6 months saving money while being part of the backbone of America, while I started to pry off the veil of the Matrix illusion. However, I soon burnt out on this as well, realizing the life of a truck driver is rife with sacrifice and offers little solace for the creative soul. Being that ungrounded as both a touring musician and trucker started to really take its toll on my physical, mental, and spiritual health, and I found myself feeling isolated, alone, and depressed. Always being go, go, go has its cons, and I remember having a mental breakdown, feeling like I didn't really belong anywhere because my story to this point was so unique. I had a hard time relating to normal people, and I didn't have much family support. Still, I decided my best move was to move back to my hometown, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I enrolled in a 9-month yoga teacher training program. I completed the program and noticed an improvement in my health, but I still felt like something was missing. It was music, the music of life pulsing through my veins, yearning to tell a story with melody and lyrics that other forms of expression could not even approach. Because I was raised in such a countercultural way, in such a conservative Bible Belt area, I never truly felt at home. Where I was born and raised in North Carolina, always conflicted. This desire to have a home, I realized, really plagued my life to this point. A lot of my first songs I wrote were about not finding a home here, making rash attachments in relationships, rushing my decision-making, and it kept me ungrounded all the while. So when the pandemic hit, in a way, it was a huge sigh of relief that I might be able to finally slow down enough and find a home, somewhere physical, release my desires of the ethereal music career for a moment. But before I did that, I needed to find a path towards stillness. I remember I couldn't even slow down my mind, and I literally just drove around the Mountain West after my job fell through due to the pandemic, wondering where I should go, what I should do next. My head was in the clouds, always writing songs, always being aloof. I was so mentally unstable and unsure of my direction, I let the car drive itself. not even really thinking which way to turn or which highway to take. Subconsciously, I remembered Taos, New Mexico in my travels, and that I always wanted to build my own house out of the earth, true adobe style. So I pointed my royal whip south and stumbled on some off-grid desert land for sale by asking some random guys hanging out in lawn chairs near a bus library. When I got there was a beautiful meditation circle made out of stone, a driveway loop, and a pile of wood chips. I rolled out my yoga mats and felt the same special vibration I had in Memphis that very time. I knew the omens were saying that me and this spot were meant to be. My intuition spoke loudly, so I spent the little bit of money I had on the land and started digging a hole in the middle of the high desert alone. Sleeping in the sage did me some serious good. It grounded me to sleep close to the earth every night, healing me in profound, simple ways. Through reconnecting with nature, I began to slowly connect with others in the area doing similar natural building projects, and I began volunteering as much as possible to learn and network. Also, I remember the best songs I've ever written were when I was most connected to nature. One of the volunteers that showed up to my build changed the trajectory of my life forever. He gave me a typewriter, showed me how to write poems on demand for strangers in the street, and we became best friend street poets. And now I've been a full-time poet for 2 years, and I'm working on my debut book. However, there is still a music in the way I write, sing, and read every poem. Every song I've ever written has led me up to this moment. How do I know I'm a musician? Well, I've tried to quit music. I can't. It's just in my blood. It comes out in the middle of the night. It's inescapable. That's how you know you are a musician for life. It's just in your veins. It's something you aren't allowed to not do. I have decided to start traveling more again now that the pandemic is over, and I'm so excited to start this next chapter of my life as a professional poet. Making a living in poetry is hard. Who told you that? It's the easiest thing in the world. You just sit there and make stuff up. Not making a living doing what you hate. Now that is hard. Don't know how to live with yourself? No living there. I bought a one-way ticket to Bali, Indonesia, have rented out my completed off-grid adobe house in New Mexico, and I can truly say I have never been more excited to see what happens next. Will you join me on this journey? I want to be a guide and friend for others seeking freedom in this crazy world. If this sounds fun, please give me a subscribe, like, and comment below on what you would like to see the next chapter be. Thanks again for watching, and remember, I love you so, so much, and you can do anything in the world if you set your mind to it. Speaking things without words and singing songs that cannot be heard. So in the end, all I really hope is that our time here won't be wasted. I'll be right here. Be right here. Whoa, be right. So take things from another point of view to see that there's a spiritual side of you. When all you love and all you know is through, you can cherish what was sacred. I'll be right here. Be right here. Whoa.
Amazing.
Oh yeah, we're getting it. We're smoking. I feel like thing's gonna explode any minute now. Oh wow, look at you go. Get that solder. Ah, this amp will be in tip-top shape in no time.